So, welcome to the Growth Project. This is, if you're new to us, this is a podcast brought to you by AMPLOS. We are a performance psychology practice headquartered in Greenville, South Carolina, and we exist in a very simple world to help you be better and pursue better. You know, our passion is to bring topics that, through this podcast, that are relevant to you, that provide some inspiration, some education, and give you a chance to apply it into your life. And so, whether that's a guest as we have today, whether it's a topic we're discussing, we always hope that you're able to take this and say, well, what does it mean? What does it mean to me? Or what does it mean to my company? Or what does it mean to my team? What does it mean to my family? And how are we going to put these ideas into practice? So that's kind of the purpose for this growth project, just to encourage you and really inspire your growth, and that's personally and professionally. So thank you for listening, and we appreciate that opportunity. So for today's podcast, so excited to introduce my good friend, David Wise, who is the president and CEO of Harper Corporation. And he can tell you more about Harper and his background, but have been with you guys for a few years. And really have been excited. And I think the thing, when I think about Harper, you guys have done such a good job. I love, more than anything, we build trust.
Right.
So look forward to kind of breaking this down and what it means to be a part of this community, be a part of the upstate. What have been some of those factors that have contributed to your growth, and what continues to inspire as you move forward? So thank you so much for joining us.
Well, my pleasure. And let me begin by first thanking you, Drew, and your whole AMPLOS team. We've benefited greatly from your counsel, your wisdom, and instruction. In fact, I had a group here this morning that was here. They come on a quarterly basis. They were our second cohort, and we're on our fourth cohort with you now. So obviously, we've enjoyed the relationship, and I think our company has benefited and grown from that. Learned a great deal about leadership, the fact that it's a responsibility more than it is a reward. We've learned about teamwork and building teams. Psychological safety is one of those words that I've learned from you and taken that with me.
I love bringing that to construction companies because men and psychological safety don't really go hand in hand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then talking about the gap between who we are and who we want to be. All of those things have played a large role in our thinking as a company and really embracing the growth mindset that AMPLOS talks so much about.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think where you and I think why I feel like such a connection to you, because, you know, an old school linebacker,
Right.
Just, hey, I'm going to do it this way. But it was so much fun for us to kind of be a partner in that process. And I think the great benefit of our work, when you think you're really contributing to other people's growth, it's really fueling yours.
Right.
And
Right.
So it's been fun to be a part of that, and we appreciate the partnership and appreciate you taking the time to share.
Yeah, and I'll give you just a little bit of background. I'm a South Carolina born and bred person, 63 years old. If you look at my life, I think you'd see faith, family, and vocation. Faith, I've been a follower of Jesus Christ for most of my life. Family, I've got a wonderful wife. We've been married for 40 years. I have a daughter and a son-in-law, and my first grandchild is 3 months old, so
Awesome.
we're excited about that.
Boy or girl? Or
a little girl.
Little girl.
And she's already got her daddy and her granddaddy wrapped. And then my son's just started practicing radiology in Wilmington.
Awesome.
And then from a vocational standpoint, I kind of fell into construction, but I've been in the industry for nearly 40 years. And as Milt said, I've been with Harper since 1991. And it's just been a great experience and a wonderful way to go through life. It really has.
Yeah, so let's back that up. As you and I were talking a little bit and getting to know you, is I never even thought about this construction path, never even thought about. So early on, I love hearing people's stories, like you grew up where, and you were thinking, what about a profession, or what about a career?
Well, I grew up in Columbia,
Okay.
And I played high school football and high school baseball. Loved athletics, was probably at best a good high school player and a mediocre small college player, but I went to PC. But I will tell you that I never really ever thought about being a construction professional. When I went to PC, I thought maybe I would be a coach.
Mm.
So I majored in English and business, thinking I would teach English and coach, but it became evident to me almost in a very clear way that was not the path I was supposed to take.
So even back up the story going to PC.
Okay. That's right.
Yeah, here's what I thought I was going to do, and I got tickled when you told me that story.
I was talking with Milt about how really God's providence has been so prominent in my life. And the fact that I attended PC is just one of those funny stories. I was being recruited, and I rode up to Clinton from Columbia with two of my teammates. And we spent the afternoon there, watched the ball game. We got in our car and headed back down I-26. And I can just remember vividly, I was driving, turning and looking at my two friends and saying, well, I can tell you one thing. I'm never going to Presbyterian College. And I'm so grateful that God intervened in that for me, because obviously I met my wife there, had great friends, great education. There was a great body of believers there that encouraged me and supported me in my faith. And then ultimately it was through a PC connection that I got engaged in construction. Some guys called me and said, we know you don't know much about construction, but we think you're a hard worker. You got good character. You can learn this business. And I was 25 years old, a few years out of school, and Catherine and I talked, and we thought, well, there's really not too much we can lose from this. We know these guys. We think this might be a good opportunity. And I went to work with them and actually went to build a restaurant in Virginia. And I was just the glorified laborer. I learned from the ground up. I was cleaning out the ditches, tying rebar, helping pour concrete, and, just kind of learning by doing. And it really resonated with me. And I guess that athletic background and the idea of being a part of a team. Construction is one of the greatest team sports, because you're bringing so many different players into that group. I mean, I've got my team, I've got subcontractors or trade partners, as we like to call them. I've got design professionals, I've got consultants, I've got a client. And ideally, all of those people are coming together with the common goal to build a project that's got quality, it's built on time, and it's built, at a reasonable cost, but all those people that are building that want to earn a reasonable fee.
Yeah.
So our objective is to accomplish those things, and, there are so many variables in a construction job site. I mean, you got weather, you got changes that are being made, you got changing conditions, you've got market conditions that change, and you have to be flexible. And it's kind of like calling an audible in football. You got to realize, okay, they're hurting me here. What do I adjust so that I can defense that player or move the ball to the next first down? All of that is in play, and that really just kind of turns my crank, I guess is the best way to say that.
So one of the things that we believe in, that we really teach, is the mental skills that make you successful in sport can make you successful in business, can make you successful in life. And so I always, when I hear you saying, hey, Milt, this is a great team sport.
Right.
I was going to teach and coach, and I love the athletics. I love being a part of a team. What does that transition look like? You talk about being adaptable and getting everybody together. What are some of those skills you learned on? Because a linebacker may not be known for winning friends.
Well, he was a smart football player, is what they said about me,
Okay.
Bill. I had to know where it was going if I was going to get there on time. So I was probably more cerebral in my approach. But there was passion there too. I think everybody linebacker brings passion. But simple things like having the work ethic, putting in the time to study the film, to understand the keys. That's very similar. We try to build the building in our mind, much like you establish a game plan to go win the ball game. There are fundamentals that you need to practice and do well, and sometimes we realize we haven't put enough focus on the fundamentals, and we see the results of that with poor performance. We go back and we refocus on the fundamentals. Some of the things that you taught us, though, was we need to have awareness, and then we needed to take action based on that awareness, and then we needed to be accountable to one another. Watching film on Sunday afternoons was accountability. We were aware. We learned from our mistakes, and we tried to take action to improve those mistakes.
That is one thing.
All of those things, yes.
That I think athletes and teams do so well is they watch the film.
Right.
And it's harder to do in business.
Right.
Right, because we aren't recording everything that you do. It's not on tape.
That eye in the sky doesn't lie, does it?
No. And
I can remember a couple of times where I just want to take that score sheet and crumble it up and crawl under the table. But my coaches were at least not too brutal in pointing out my mistakes. mistakes and telling me, here's where you got to get better.
So what's one way that, like, because I like that idea, so we evaluate, we build it in our minds, we focus on the fundamentals, and sometimes it goes well and sometimes it doesn't. How do you guys bring that to life at Harper? How do you evaluate?
Okay, I would say we try to evaluate on a weekly basis. We have meetings on all of our job sites that we call core meetings, where that core team is together and they're talking about, okay, what are the big rocks that each one of those team members has to take on in that coming week. And then you kind of measure how they did in the previous week with those big rocks. And it's really just promoting a good, what's the word I'm looking for?
Blueprint, game
well,
plan.
It's even more than that. It's really kind of an understanding, a joint understanding of all the teammates as to what the roles, responsibilities, and key functions that they are trying to perform on a weekly basis. Then we have monthly reporting meetings where the project management staff comes and meets with senior leadership, and they're going to speak to the performance of the job. Now, in those monthly reports, a lot of it is kind of geared toward the financial. We want to understand how we're doing financially, and that's more than just knowing are we maintaining our profit or we're not, but being certain that that team has a really good handle on the finances.
Okay.
You know, sometimes you can kind of wing it a little bit. Well, we want to promote systems where they're not winging, and we want to be able to guide them in those meetings to where they are really taking a hold of them, understanding how to operate the systems and manage cost. And we want them to tell us whether it's good news or it's bad news. We don't want them to come in there and try to conceal that from us. We want there to be openness there, because it's not judgment. It's more of being together and providing guidance and insight, kind of like the coach looking at that film, providing correction. We want to be doing the same thing in that arena.
Well, there's where the psychological safety comes in.
Exactly.
And it's so easy, I think, to be a critic. You know, go back to growth mindset, David. It's so easy to catch people doing something wrong.
Right.
So how have you, because you've got a lot of power,
right?
President, CEO, the leadership team, how do you get these job sites to really tell you the truth?
Well, that takes time. And I bet if I'm truthful, I don't get as much truth maybe sometimes as my next guy, my vice president gets, and then the guy below him. But over time, building trust, we talked about that. Building trust is what we are always trying to do. As the president and CEO, I feel like my primary responsibility is to promote the well-being and the safety of my teammates. And I don't know, this is not my own statement. I don't know where I got the quote, but they said that great culture produces an atmosphere where people and ideas can flourish.
Oh, that's good.
And I think that's really part of our mindset. We want to have a culture where our people are empowered and where their ideas are at least listened to, and in many instances they are taken and implemented.
Yeah, and so go back to this piece, because when you hear as president and CEO, like that, you believe your greatest job is the well-being and safety and creating a culture. I love that, where people can flourish and ideas can flourish. Right. And so maybe not many, especially when I think of CEOs in construction and maybe predominantly men. Right. Right. They aren't thinking about well-being. Right. So what does that really look like? Well,
and I think, I'll be honest with you, your psychological safety's kind of helped even move me more to be able to say that more clearly.
Good.
You know, when I first became president, the first thing coming out of the gate that I learned from being on a volunteer board was a quote from Truett Cathy. And he was in New York with his sons, and they were actually talking about going public. And he was listening to his boys talk about this and this and this, and all of a sudden they heard their daddy beating on the table. And he looked at him and he said, "Boys, it's not about getting bigger, it's about getting better. Because if you get better, then your customers will demand that you get bigger." Mm-hmm. And that was a great way for me to step into the role of being president, because I've never set like some numerical goal. We want to be in this many offices. We want to have this kind of volume. It's always been about what can we do to be better at delivering our construction services in a way that satisfies our clients. And I just feel like that's been a large part. And so that's kind of the mindset. But if I want to get better, I need to make sure that my team, that's where the first place I can make sure we're getting better is the team and the way they see themselves and the way they feel about being empowered to do things and to grow. All of that's in play there.
Man, I love that. Like you've heard that, I love quotes. And so, and so I love that you're dropping some of these nuggets on us. Thoreau said, success comes to those who are too busy to be looking for it.
Right.
And so many times, like it's okay to have a worthy goal and it's okay to have a financial goal or a revenue goal or a size goal.
Right.
But what I hear you saying is, hey, this is what's really important to us.
Right.
And we're going to get really good here.
Right.
And I think as you go from being the laborer where you started to the president and CEO, your role changes. But what I like, you're still trying to serve your customers. It's just you got to serve your people.
Right. And we've got so many great people. And, another thing I would say is we've done a lot of smart things. And most of those were not my idea, okay? But I did have the courage to implement those ideas. And I mean, that's so many different ways. Construction technologies or building information modeling. That was something that 10 years ago, Matt Johnson, my vice president, said, this is something that's out there. We need to really invest in this. Well, we have, and it's made us better able to serve our customers, to build projects right the first time with quality and on time. So that's just one example. But, I think where I'm going is that we've seen bear out the idea that there's a culture where people and ideas have flourished.
Yeah.
I mean, you can look all across our company. Brian Royal, who's going to be my successor, he started Environmental Systems in 2010. So it's been around 15 years, and Harper has become a major player in the water and wastewater in the Carolinas over that 15-year period. And again, Brian had an idea. We allowed him to found that business, and he has done the same thing. He's built a strong team. He's promoted the well-being and safety of his teammates, and they've become, a significant part of our overall business.
So one of the things, David, I think leaders have a hard time doing is transitioning, especially when you're a grinder.
Right.
And you're a worker, is trusting others.
Right.
And so as you're telling, hey, Milt, I've had the courage to implement and act on those ideas, meaning I have to trust Brian.
Right.
I have to trust Matt.
Right.
How did you get to that point to really trusting other people?
Well, I think that comes over time and experience. I've worked very closely with both of them for, over 15 years. We spent time together personally, and then we spent a lot of time in the last 10 years having regular meetings, understanding where we were, where we wanted to go, having key initiatives that we established collectively, and then measuring our performance on those key initiatives on an annual basis. So you do those things over and over again, and then you go through some really highs and some lows. You build a great level of trust. That doesn't mean that there's not tension, or there's maybe not sometime hurt feelings even. But, I think we're all big enough to realize, hey, we've got the same objective in mind, and we're able to, smooth out those rough spots.
Yeah. And so we talk about it's hard to have trust without time.
Right.
And we can get so busy that we don't make the time. But what I hear you say and what I've witnessed is you guys made the time, and it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Right. And it doesn't mean we're going to face some challenges, but building that trust over time and just having the courage to take action.
Right. I mean, we've had circumstances where we've had a couple of jobs go really poorly.
Yeah. And
I mean, we got down into the weeds there, and guys recognized, man, we didn't do that well. But we took action. We internally, between Matt and Brian and David or other folks in the company, recognizing, hey, we didn't meet the standard here, so we're aware of it. What do we do to make sure we meet the standard the next time? And then we are able to measure that, as we go along. So that is very much part of it. So we've talked about how we've built trust internally. I want to speak a little bit from a bigger picture as to what Harper's mission is. And our mission is to build up our communities, our clients, and each other by building trust into everything that we do. And I want to break that down. It is a big deal to me to say that we build up. I love the idea of being a builder. A builder takes parts and pieces, materials, equipment. He puts them together to make or form something in its compositive whole. And then if you get out even a little bit bigger than that, a builder creates and develops. Well, I like that. I like being able to be a builder and the idea that I can build up my community. That we're building up where we live, and we build education facilities that our children will learn in. We build treatment plants, provide clean water. We build medical office building and skilled nursing to provide for the health of our people. Those kind of things, I want my people to be excited about that. We build up our clients. If we build up our clients and we do a good job for them, the net result is we're building ourselves up at the same time. And then I want to be kind of getting back to health and well-being, building each other up. I want us to be a group of people that build up each other. And, build up, encourage is to build up. So I want to be encouraging in all of those aspects. And I remind my guys, I'm on a roll now, that what we do, I like to call it a vocation.
Yeah.
It's not a career, it's a vocation. And it's a calling. And I'm going to quote again, Aristotle says, vocation is where your skills and abilities intersect with the world's needs. And I tell my guys that. I want to recognize, hey, we're not just putting pipe in the ground or pouring concrete or setting steel. We're building something that is going to serve our communities and hopefully improve the quality of life for the people that live in our communities. If you can't get excited about that,
I'm fired up myself.
That is, so when we came up with that mission statement, that building up was key, but then building trust.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be the first to tell you that we don't always build trust. That's an ambitious goal to say, we're going to build trust in everything we can do, everything we do. But I can tell you that's our mindset, is to build trust. We're going to aim small and we're going to miss small.
Yep.
And that gets us to where you were asking me, well, what do you do on a project where
let's
trust?
take this, because you got me. So
Okay.
One of the things, I say all the time, if the life you're leading and the work you're doing does not inspire you, it won't inspire anybody else.
Right.
So I think I love you getting your passion.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, this is what I believe in.
Right.
This is what's so important for me, that it's a vocation, not a career.
Yeah.
And I believe so strongly in this, that this is how we're going to live. This is how we're going to work, and this is what we're going to strive for.
Right.
Yeah. And so I love that energy. And when they see, like, if you aren't inspired, they won't be inspired.
Right.
Like if Harper isn't inspired, your clients won't be, your customers won't be inspired.
Right.
And so I love that energy, and we aren't going to live it perfectly.
Yeah.
But before we get to those examples,
Okay.
how long have y'all had that mission, and how'd y'all come up with it?
Shortly after I became president, we one of the marketing people that we brought on, we not having a marketing department before then. It was so lean, and as we've grown, we've added support services, but had a very strong marketing professional that said, it might be time for Harper to go through a new branding. And they brought a consultant in, and they spent a lot of time talking to our clients, talking to our trade partners, and talking internally to kind of get a sense of who we were. And they brought back all this feedback. And they kind of took that and they shaped it to kind of create a story, about who we are. And they came up with that mission, but they'd heard us talk about vocation, and they'd heard us talk about building, that we wanted client relationships are our lifeblood. The best business development I can have is to do a good job so that they want me to come back and build another one. So all of that's what they're hearing. And they heard things like, Harper's working with us, not against us.
Yeah.
Harper brings a team attitude. We never feel like it's us against them. Those are the kind of the atmosphere we're trying to create to build trust in the marketplace.
And I love, back to your passion, it's so easy to be externally focused. And I love that part of that includes we're going to build up our people.
Right.
Like we're going to build a culture where people and ideas flourish.
Right.
And so many times we think so much about our customers or our clients, we take for granted the very people that are providing that. And so I love hearing that balance.
Well, and again, I think one of the best decisions we made, I guess, was 4 years ago, was to engage AMPLOS. Because a lot of what we had in there kind of percolating, you helped it kind of be distilled into things that we're even doing better and more effectively than we were prior to that.
Well, thank you.
And I'm very sincere, and I'm very sincere in that. And the idea of really, we've got a lot of talented young people. And when I say young, 35 and up, I mean,
it's amazing
45 and younger.
It's amazing what's young now. Yeah,
but and they think differently than I think, and they deal with different circumstances than what we deal with. I mean, it's a different world than it was when I was 25, 35 years old. And we want to create flexibility, and we want to create that. They're very interested in a career path. This is where I'm a little bit different. I was more about plowing my 40 acres and just doing my job well. But these young folks who are talented and thoughtful, they want to know a little bit more about a path. And so I think that's helped us, understand, okay, how do we communicate to them? How do we create a pathway for them to see what opportunities can be available to them? Now, we tell them what you tell them, that successful people are too busy to be looking for it. But we also recognize, okay, a thoughtful person's going to spend some time thinking about that. We don't just need to bury our head. We need to be forthright in talking with them about those things.
Yeah, that's such a good wisdom, because it is a different mindset.
Right.
And I love your version of, I'm just going to plow this 40 acres.
Right.
And I'm going to I'm going to be the best that I can be. And one of my favorite proverbs says, do you see someone skilled in their work? They will serve before kings. They will not serve before obscure men.
Right.
And so when you're talking about plowing your 40 acres, I'm going to plow this to the best of my ability and see what that opens up.
And then that gets kind of back to God's providence when you look at me, because I did plow hard, but I just know his hand of favor. I never ever once thought I would be leading a company of the size that Harper is, and with the kind of people working for the type of clients. I mean, everything about it has just so far exceeded maybe any expectation that I would have had. But again, I was too busy trying to take care of the things that I could take care of. Yeah. And as a result, I've been blessed and given more opportunity.
And I think oftentimes, David, we set limits on what God can do or what we can do.
Right.
By our own limitations, by our own thoughts, by having people that are not building us up.
Right.
It's so easy. We live in a world full of critics. And I love the language of building up, because it's so easy to break other people down, including yourself.
And I tell you this, watching y'all work with those guys that are in their 25 to 35 range, I would have been so blessed and benefited had I had that. But, it was that different mindset. And we were lean and mean, and we went and we did our work and we did it well. But, when I stepped into the president, I knew not all, I knew a great deal about how to do the actual work.
Yeah.
But how to lead a company, I'd led projects, but to lead a company, I just became so much more inquisitive. Mm-hmm. I wish I'd have been inquisitive earlier. And then that inquisitiveness was then met by us engaging with y'all. And that's where I'm saying all this stuff that was percolating, y'all just brought clarity to where, okay, I can see this. And I mean, we are really implementing a lot of that in an effective way now.
Well, Robbie, I appreciate you saying that. And I love that curiosity is one of my favorite attributes. Right. It's something that you have. I hope it's something that I possess and demonstrate. But Robbie Caldwell, our old line off of the line, I love what he says. He's just a good old boy from Pageville, and he's like, Doc, it ain't like you're telling me nothing I've never heard, right? You just say it in a way that's different, right? You just, I got to think. And what I think part of a great culture is, hey, we start speaking the same language a little bit. So psychological safety means this. Trust means this.
Right.
Courageous conversations mean this. Growth mindset means this. And so these are all ideas, but you guys, again, had to say, okay, how do we put this into practice?
Right.
And how do we start, it's things you've been doing. I would say you figured it out pretty good.
Right. But again, it starts with people. And I think I mentioned this to you, a guy named Glenn Jackson that's a marketing guru in Atlanta, has the 7 pillars of preeminence. And it's talking about preeminent companies. And one of those pillars was trust. And what he said about that this was about the time I was becoming president too, Milt, when I was learning this. And that's why it became such a big part of our plan, because it just resonated with me. He talked about trust is truly founded on character and competence. And we've been very fortunate in finding and selecting and retaining and rewarding people who have high character. They share the same core values that the Harper family started 75 years ago.
What are some of those values?
That's practicing integrity and honesty and responsibility. That's an honest day's pay for an honest day's work. It's promoting the safety and well-being of your people. They're your most valuable resource. It's providing your client with a good project of quality, on time and on budget. All of those things have been a part of the things that we value, or the principles that guide us. And there's been a code of behavior that we want to be professionals. Doug was always preaching to me that we're construction professionals, and when you're a professional, you're elevating the standard of your game. And there are probably a lot of construction people out there that don't see themselves as professionals. No. I want every member of Harper's team, from a laborer all the way up to me, to recognize they can be a professional as a construction worker.
Like the foundation of what we do, that like as you think, so you are.
Exactly.
And I like what you're like, we're changing the game. Here's what it means to be a professional.
Right.
Here's what it means to be a builder.
Right.
Here's what it means to be a part of this team. And so if we can define that and start thinking differently about it, then we open ourselves up to possibilities.
Right. And when you talk about character, when we make decisions, we want to make decisions that take safety into account. We want to make decisions that take client satisfaction into account, quality, schedule, and then money is part of that too. It's not the only one.
Yeah.
And in many times, it's the last of the five. But when we make decisions, whether it's on a job site about a big decision on the job, or we're making a decision in the company, we truly think about those things. Now, quality, when we're talking about a new program or a new technology coming into our company, well, okay, how is that going to help us get better as a company, is a thought when we're considering quality. Safety, is it good for our people to make a decision and move in this way? So that's part of that character, is those values kind of help give that character a roadmap to go by as we make decisions.
And what I love, that informs how we hire.
Right.
The jobs that we take, the mechanisms we create.
Correct.
That informs everything. And so the competence piece.
All right. That means that you're good at what you do. You talk about credibility when you talk about character, and you talk about reliability when you talk about competence. And we want to have people that know their business and are diligent in conducting their business and really providing what the owner's expectations are, whether it's the specifications, the conforming to their requirements. And we're involved in training. I mean, we've done a lot with co-ops from Clemson over the last 10 or 12 years, where we get them to come in and work for us while they're in school. Those guys have now been with Harper in our company for 10 years, and they have really grown in their competencies in a variety of roles, where what they're able to bring from a competency standpoint as a 30-year-old is really remarkable.
But what I'm hearing, and I think we focus on character,
right?
We can teach and develop competence.
Exactly.
Is that
is so true? Yes. Yeah. And I mean, when you talk about character, we're learning how to ask questions to make sure folks have a growth mindset.
Yeah.
We don't want to have a lot of fixed mindset people coming in here.
Good.
So that's one thing that we've learned. And then I think there is a lot of professional development and training. AMPLOS is one component of that. But we have ongoing training throughout the year for field people, for project management staff, that we are very much committed in investing in training and developing our people. That's, again, part of scratching the itch of this younger generation. Yeah. They eat that up, and we want to keep feeding it to them because it benefits us. I'm not telling you any stories. It does.
Well, that's part of it.
Right, exactly.
And so to me, it goes back to this character and competence builds trust.
Right.
And since we're human, we aren't going to be perfect all the time.
Right.
And so we're going to make mistakes, whether that's internally or externally. And so how does Harper respond if like trust takes so hard to build, but it's really quickly destroyed?
Yeah, it doesn't take long.
And so how do you guys respond when maybe you don't show up or you don't live up to those values all the time?
I've thought of a couple of those. We were, this has been a few years back, but we were late on a project that was healthcare related. And it'd been a great project. The outcome, other than us being a few weeks late, which created a little bit of trouble for them, I kind of smelled the smoke on that. This is one of those places where the project manager didn't quite get as transparent with me as he should have, but I kind of heard the smoke. And so I went to that meeting, and I wasn't sure what I was going to hear, but I did know it was going to be something. And they started talking about, well, y'all were late. Are there any consequences to being late? And I just looked at him and I said, look, if it cost you any money for those 2 weeks, for us not being ready when we said we were going to be ready, you let me know. I said, I can't argue with you. We told you we were going to be finished. Some of those last few loose ends, and he walked out of there and he didn't tell me, but he told somebody else. He said, he came in there, he was ready to take his medicine.
Yeah.
If that's what he needed to do. And after hearing that, I didn't want to make him take his medicine.
Wow.
So that's one example. And then there's another example where we had issues with a project leader that left the company. And prior to his leaving, he probably wasn't on his P's and Q's as well as he should have been. And I realized quickly that we were in the middle of something, and there wasn't the best will with our client and Harper. And we were 8 months from finishing the project.
Boy.
And it wasn't that the project was that bad out of shape, but the relationship with the client and the communications with the client had not been typical to Harper. And man, we just rolled up our sleeves, and I started getting more involved in some of those meetings. My team got more engaged in making sure they were communicating more effectively. What I find sometimes is that when we're so task-oriented, we can get into meetings, and it can be all about the task and us getting our message out. But there's no interaction. There's no real communication going on in some of those settings.
Oh, most meetings are that way.
And we just had to do a better job of trying to pause and listen and navigate those circumstances. And it was bumpy, but we got to the end. The students are in. It's a beautiful building. They're complimentary of the building. But I think they would be honest and tell you that, we didn't get the same Harper experience there that we were accustomed to getting.
Yeah.
And I can't change that. All I can do is go in there and say, okay, we realized there was a mistake, there was an error. Can you see that we did everything we could to right that ship?
That's quickly.
And I think they would tell you that we did do that.
And so there is at least credibility, like how are we going to respond?
Right.
And so why do you think so many companies and so many leaders fail to step into that and take ownership?
I probably am empathetic to a fault in that my desire is I want to build up my client so until, I'm a pleaser is what I am. And there are probably times when, to the company's detriment, I might have bent over a little further than I should have to make sure that client experience was as good as it could be. I could debate that, but if somebody said that, then I would argue, okay, you may have a point there, but think through it this way. And part of my mindset is we do most of our work. Now, we're expanding regionally, but most of our work is in the 10 counties of the upstate. And to do as much work as we do in the 10 counties of the upstate, that reputation is so important that I would rather swallow a little bit to maintain the reputation and the relationship. Maybe other guys are more dollar driven, or maybe they just feel like I'm right.
Yeah.
And, I guess sometimes I'm willing to put up with a little bit and not say that I'm right in the effort, in the model of creating a healthier dynamic and building a stronger sense of trust.
What I hear is, and what I love about your passion and Harper is, hey, here's what we believe, and here's what we're about, and here are the core values,
Right.
and that integrity and that safety and building trust internally and externally.
Right.
And so we're going to have the courage to act according to what we believe. And I think that's where, like, whether other companies just have core values that aren't practiced,
Right.
or a vision that is only about profitability,
Right.
or what they're going to do, like, it's not clearly defined. And if it's not clearly defined, it's hard to really operate on.
Right. In my mind, it's almost a little bit of the cost of doing business when I look at it. The idea that, okay, maybe I give some here, but it's part of the development for the next project.
Yeah.
So that's purely an economical part of what I'm saying here.
Well, you just said earlier on business development.
Right.
Like, our best business development, I don't know how much a percentage of business is returning for you.
Right. It's a significant part of our business still.
Yeah. And so we want to be good business partners, and building them up is, I don't want to sacrifice the short term for the long term.
That's pretty much, yes. And if you want to call that the cost of the business and our mission kind of coming together, that is the mindset on some of these decisions that I have made, maybe contrary to some of what the people whose projects that we're running may have thought was right.
Yeah, but I think that's balancing. You think about well-being and performance is what the best corporations do. I think you got to be mindful. If we just have a high level of well-being, we're going to serve the mission at whatever cost. It's going to be hard to stay in business.
Exactly.
And if we're just performance-driven and profit-driven, it's going to be hard to have repeat customers.
Right. You're not building trust.
No.
Right.
And that's the art.
Exactly.
That's the art of what you're talking about.
Right.
In that process. So this idea of building up this community, and I hear, hey, we're in 10 upstate communities, and the pride in that. What are some of those projects that stick out to you that you're really proud of being a part of?
There are so many, but I'm going to name just a couple. The Unity Park, to me, is every time I go out there, I just smile. I recognize what a transformation that was in that part of our town.
So a lot, like, we have listeners, believe it or not, Dave, like 113 countries.
Okay.
So Unity Park is what in Greenville, South Carolina?
Right out of the downtown business district. It's a 60-acre site. It was a part really of urban blight and really racial discrimination. It was called the Southern Side because it was on the south side of the railroad tracks. And it had been an area just treated very poorly by Greenville for really up until the last 20, 25 years, when there became more of an emphasis on taking care of our community, and particularly that part of our community. So we've transformed, the city has transformed that area into a park, Unity Park, that's designed to unite people. And you go out there and it's just every walk of life, every ethnic group, people are just out there enjoying the beautiful environment and just really building each other up. Yeah. I mean, it's just I can't help but go out there and smile. And then the Spartanburg YMCA, that's my home YMCA. We built that 15 years ago. And that's the crossroads of Spartanburg. Yeah. I mean, that every different group in Spartanburg comes through that YMCA probably more so than any other community building in town. And just to see that, those kind of things just excite me. And then, I could talk about recently United Community Bank to build their corporate headquarters, where Lynn Harton decided to bring that business and headquartered in Greenville.
Yeah. I
mean, that's great for our community. That's great. So those are just a few. And then anytime I go on one of our wastewater and wastewater sites, which I don't understand all the technical parts of that, I just smile because I recognize, man, what a gift that we're able to play a part in making sure that people in Greenville, Spartanburg, Anderson, all over have clean drinking water. Yeah. That's what a wonderful thing.
That's why it's a vocation.
Exactly.
And that's why it fits so well. We're going to build our people, our communities. We're going to be an active part of this. And I love the idea, especially in the upstate, especially in the South, are we building things where people are coming together and connecting from all walks of life.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's it for me. Yeah.
I love, the greatest part of my job is getting to hear people's story and about what's past them and what's important to them. And I love how you've blended your work and your profession. I'm learning a new quote somebody shared with me from James Michener. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but he talked, the master in the art of living has a little distinction between his work and his play.
Oh, wow.
Between his labor and his love. I hadn't memorized the whole quote, but I'm working towards that.
Yeah.
But I look for those opportunities in my life, and I hear that so prevalent in your life. The master, like to me, this is a labor of love, and I don't know. And he says in the quote, he doesn't know whether he's working or he's playing. To him, he's pursuing his own vision of excellence in both.
Right. Yeah.
And let other people decide that.
Yeah.
And so when I hear your passion and see your passion, but I also know Harper's in a transition phase. You're a little bit of a transition phase. And so if you've listened to the podcast, you've heard me talk a lot about dreams greater than memories. And so what does that mean for Harper right now? And then what does that mean for you?
I would say for Harper, one of the things I learned from Doug Harper is to be thoughtful and deliberate. He made the company aware that I would be the president, 1 year in advance of that taking effect. That gave me a year to begin my transition. I certainly continued after that first year, but gave me a year to do that. And I think it kind of set the company where they knew what was going to happen. So we have done the same in my transition. We knew several years ago that if something happened to me and I was incapacitated, that Brian Royal would be the next leader. So we've announced to our company 2 years in advance, in November of 24, we announced to our company that we were beginning a transition and that in October of 2026, Brian would step into the president's role. He became an executive vice president in October of 24, and his first year is kind of more internal focused. And he's already gotten involved in helping us do some things that make us better in managing general administrative costs, how we are trying to prevent risk with some of the ways that we document our efforts. And then he's going to be a vital part in Vision 2030. We had a Vision 2019 plan for 5 years that we extended for 25, but we're now in the process of planning for the 5 years of 2026 through 2030. And it's amazing how much different we are than we were in 2019. There's probably 250 more employees.
Wow.
We've got a full marketing staff. We've got a full construction technology staff. We brought information technologies in-house. We've got a small projects group called Harper XS. We've got offices in Somerville, Asheville, Charlotte, and looking to expand in other locations. So when you're talking about a plan now versus then, we're engaging a lot more people.
Yep.
And I think that's the right thing for us to do. But, Brian is leading that effort, and I think it's wonderful because it's given him a chance to really integrate with people that he's not worked as closely with as he has for the last 15 years with ESD.
Yeah, what I love is trust without time.
Right.
Like that you guys have the vision of, in order for him to be effective, he has to have trust, because that's so core to what we do. And you got to give him time to build trust.
Right. And everybody respects, because they know what a wonderful job he's done and how that business has grown, but yet interacting and, like you say, building trust and understanding how to work with each other is kind of what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And then the second year will be more outward focusing, where we get him involved with the clients, the architects, the design professionals, economic developers, all the people that our commercial business is interacting with. We want to start getting him to where, as I'm stepping into the chairman's role, he can call on me to help in those areas, but over time, he'll be the primary point of contact for a lot of those relationships also.
And I think just another good example, so many companies are scared to kind of play their hand.
Yeah.
Right. They're scared to be transparent because it's going to disrupt or it's going to create anxiety or uncertainty. But I love, working for like here's our game plan.
Yeah.
And here's what we're going to do, and here's what your role is.
It's funny because I had some people tell me, well, I hear you're retiring. I said, well, that's true, but I haven't retired yet, and I'm not ready to stop. And then I said, when I retire, I am going to move into the chairman's role, and I'll still have some engagement with Harper. It won't be near the level of responsibility or the time commitment, but I'm not going to go away. And I think, like you say, when they hear, boy, that's a thoughtful way for them to approach it. Hopefully that builds trust too. These guys are, they're serious about having a sustainable business.
Yeah.
And we want to do that first for our own people, but we also want to do it for those relationships that we've cultivated with clients and architects, and let them know, hey, the Harper's going to be the same. You can count on us even as we're making this transition.
Yeah, so we didn't even mention this is the 75th year. Right. And so, but there's a recurring theme. Even character today means the core values of the Harper Corporation that was started for the family.
Right.
We're living that out, and Brian may do it a little bit differently, but it's still going to be building trust.
Exactly.
And living in those components.
Exactly. And it's funny. I have no problem saying that I think I've probably taken Harper as far as I can take it or I'm supposed to take it. And I do think Brian brings some skill sets, and being a little bit more of the age of this generation, that there are some things he's going to be able to do as we continue to grow that do paint a very bright future for Harper.
And I think I appreciate your humility with that, and being able to separate who you are from what you do.
Right.
That Harper is so, like, the vocation is so integrated, but it's your ego isn't tied to it.
Right. And part of that is I still have passion, but I'm not as resilient as I once was. So I look into that next season.
Yeah, tell us about it.
I mean, there are probably more days now than there were a year ago where I'm thinking, that looks like it's going to be about the right time for me to be able to invest my time and energy in other things. You talk about Catherine, she doesn't want me to quit and be at home.
Yeah.
I mean, we love each other, but she doesn't want me at home all the time. And I don't think that'd be good for either one of us. So, the idea that I can kind of wean myself from work. So, maybe as the chairman of the board in year one, maybe I'm still working half the time.
Yeah.
But over time, it's going to be where I'm just the chairman of the board and I'm only doing those responsibilities, which, are intense at certain times of the year, but other times it's not really anything to be doing. So trying to figure out, okay, what does that next season mean for me? And I'm still praying about that and looking forward. I love talking about the things we're talking about. And I've been able to get in a situation where younger men have reached out to me and say, hey, would you drink a cup of coffee with me? Would you? Yeah. And I hope that's one thing that I can do. I mean, I love doing that. And
you've been doing it for a long time.
And I just think, God has allowed me to grow a fair amount of wisdom that I would welcome sharing with other young men or young ladies for that matter even. But I hope that's a part of what the future is for me.
You've done that today.
Right. Well.
Right.
Yeah.
You've shared so much knowledge and wisdom and passion and understanding. And I think the research suggests that as we age, especially men, still got to be responsible for something.
Right.
And
that's part of that coaching thing. You know, I mean, that's still in a way that what I've been doing is coaching, and I would love to be able to continue that, in whatever realm moving forward.
Well, I got confidence that, the 40 acres that you continue to plow will continue to reap an abundant harvest. Well, and I look forward to watching it. So thank you so much for today.
And let me just say that I guess I'm just very grateful that I can say that it has been a blessing, and that, like you say, the integration of work and vocation and faith and family, all of that, I just am a blessed man.
Well, it's so evident.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.